How wonderful to see you all. And thank you very much for making the time. I said to many of you, but I think it's beyond that. It's about the travel, the jet lag, and a number of things. So thank you very much for making the effort to come and join us today in this very auspicious moment and a critical milestone for us. So where we'll be sharing our 50 years of history as WorldFish, but also as Anis. Where are you, Anis? There she is. Anis reminded us also it's not just about looking back, but also it's about looking forward. So this is an excellent opportunity for all of us to chart the next 50 years together. Having said that, I also say that hopefully in the next 50 years, WorldFish will be irrelevant as well, because hopefully we'll be living in a world which doesn't need WorldFish, because all the world's problems would have been solved by then, I hope. So if we exist, hopefully we'll exist in a different form, right? So now, let me start with a bit of protocol first. First of all, Your Excellency, Mr. Sidi Touré, the Minister of Animal Resources and Livestock and Fisheries of Côte d'Ivoire, who's been really a great friend and supporter of WorldFish, who traveled all the way here for only one night to be with us today. So thank you very much for coming, sir. Equally so, our members of the System Council of the CGR, who chose Penang as their place to convene their meeting. Again, thank you very much in making the effort and to come all the way here as well. And likewise to our partners and WorldFish colleagues as well. So given the current funding environment, of course, we are holding this in a hybrid format. So this is more cost effective, I think, but also saving a few carbon footprints. So those who are online as well, a very warm welcome to the WorldFish 50th Anniversary Science Fair. So I thought I would share some thoughts, because the last 6 months have been personally for me and many colleagues here a moment of reflection, because when you say 50 years, it's quite a milestone. And therefore, actually, you spend a lot of time reflecting back and of the present and the future as well. So I would like to reflect a bit more today with you all, but also share a bit about the future as well. And to begin with, my challenge all the time is whenever we talk about food, I cannot help but think about the paradox of plenty. In this world, I don't think we have a shortage of food. There's plenty of more food to feed the world. However, the challenge is it being distributed fairly? That's the most critical question. And that paradox for me is a bit personal. I grew up in the Horn of Africa, in Eritrea, in the 1980s, which is the epicenter of the famine that struck the Horn of Africa. I'm sure many of us are maybe old-ish enough to remember that moment. And I'm sure many of you had a role to play in responding to that famine. During that time, that people like Amartya Sen, who taught us or reflected upon this and said, starvation is the characteristics of some people not having enough food to eat. It is not the characteristic of there being not enough food to eat. And what makes me ponder sometimes is this is still true. That's the reality in this world. And therefore, our mission that was set to end hunger 50 years ago still remains relevant, in my opinion. And therefore, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I come to you today with a personal conviction that science must not only describe the world, but change it. And that food, and of course being here, especially aquatic foods, must be a lever of shared prosperity and not a privilege. This year, as I said, we celebrate 50 years of WorldFish since its inception, and 40 years, which is another milestone, in the Solomon Islands, and 25 years since we called this beautiful home, Malaysia, our home essentially, for our headquarters. For decades, or the last 50 years of pioneering work in genetics, in small-scale fisheries, fish ecology, natural resource governance, and now entering this new era of digital innovation. So WorldFish has been at the forefront of innovation for the last 5 decades. Therefore, colleagues, as we mark this critical milestone, we honor the visionary minds who laid the foundation of WorldFish. Scientists, thinkers, leaders who dared to believe that fish could be more than just food. It could be a force for development, for dignity, and for peace. Their legacy lives on in every water body, every data set, every policy instrument, and every community we serve. WorldFish, as many of you know, or if not all of you know, helped and scale the genetically improved farm tilapia, a strain that now feeds over 20 million people across Asia and Africa. We've illuminated the critical and often invisible contributions of small-scale fishers who land 40% of the global fish catch, yet they receive a fraction of attention. We brought evidence to the forefront of global nutrition dialogues, positioning fish not just as food, but as essential nourishment, rich in iron, zinc, omega-3, and many more, especially for women and children. By the way, this is the gift tilapia. Hopefully you'll get to see a bit more about them and learn a bit more about them today. Here's a fun fact. How many of you have had at least once in your life tilapia rather? Goodness me, that's almost everyone here. So here's a fun fact that you can use this for icebreaker in any kind of social occasion in the future. That fish, that tilapia that you had, there's 50 to 70% chance that it was either gift or gift-derived variety of tilapia. That's how widespread it is now. That's how significant it is. That's what we call scale. But it's just beyond science as well. Beyond doing science, WorldFish, our founding predecessors, and our current colleagues have always dared to challenge power as well. We've bridged silos, and we've questioned narratives over the years. Because, let's be clear, aquatic food systems have long been underfunded, undervalued, and misunderstood, seen as marginal to the agricultural sector, or just as a small coastal concern. But what happens in our rivers, lakes, and oceans determines the future of food, our climate, our dignity. Therefore, what's the aquatic food system that we want for now and the future? And as we look forward, we ought to ask ourselves, what kind of food system do we want to leave behind for the next 50 years? Colleagues, again, as I said, it's not just about nourishing people or feeding people, but also aquatic foods have a significantly lower environmental footprint compared to terrestrial food production systems. For instance, the greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of protein from aquaculture or fisheries are generally lower than those from livestock. Innovations like the giant, which is the genetically improved Abbasa Nile strain in Egypt, have demonstrated superior growth performance and stress resilience, but also a 36% lower ecological footprint to their wild counterparts. Similarly, integrated rice fish systems practiced in various parts of Asia and now gradually increasingly so in Africa enhance soil fertility, reduce the need for chemical fertilizers, and increase overall farm productivity. These systems not only boost rice yields, but also provide an additional source of protein, contributing to food security and diversified incomes for farming communities. And recently, regenerative aquaculture practices, such as the AquaAdapt project, and hopefully many of us will have the privilege to visit a site here on Friday, which includes seaweed and shellfish farming, offer environmental benefits such as carbon sequestration and water purification if at scale. So I could go on and tally a long list of innovations that have transformed aquatic food systems over the last 50 years. What we need is incorporating these and many more examples of sustainable aquaculture and fisheries practices into our food systems, and they would present a viable pathway to address climate change, enhance food and nutrition security, and promote shared prosperity for all. But there's always a but, isn't there? Despite all these opportunities, before we can shape the future, we must name the constraints that hold us back. And chief amongst them is this. As I said earlier, aquatic food systems have been chronically underinvested in for decades. Despite their vital role, feeding over 3.3 billion people with essential protein and micronutrients, despite the fact that they have much lower greenhouse gas emission or lower ecological footprint compared to other food sources, despite supporting the livelihoods of over 800 million people globally, aquatic food systems receive a meager 2 to 3% of global food system funding. Just a moment to reflect for a moment. This disparity is staggering. Agriculture R&D funding is skewed overwhelmingly towards terrestrial crops and livestock. Even within the so-called blue economy, even within the blue economy sector, around 97% of that is diverted towards renewable energy and so on and so forth. And therefore, this is a critical question to ask ourselves, all of us, as we reflect in terms of how do we change this, how do we turn it around and course correct as we move forward. And I'm happy to give you, not really happy, rather sad to give an example from Africa, for example. According to a WorldFish assessment by our colleague Chinyi, if she's in the room, yeah, yes, hi Chinyi. What we learned is in order There's a lot of talk about the role of aquaculture in Africa and how it can transform the sector. Its fullest potential. The investment gap in Africa alone is around $12 billion a year. Colleagues, this is not just a financing gap. In my opinion, it's a blind spot. And it's cost us dearly as humanity. We are losing billions each year in potential nutrition gains, economic returns, and climate benefits. We are underutilizing nature-based solutions like seaweed and sustainable farming, sustainable fisheries, and put our food systems on a low-emission development pathway. Because aquatic food systems offer us a sea of opportunities. But again, the question is, why has this underinvestment persisted over decades? Because aquatic food systems, in my opinion, fall between bureaucratic cracks, because they lack a political constituency, because their complexity makes them easy to overlook. These are the narratives that are out there. But complexity is not an excuse. And invisibility is not inevitability. So as a research organization at WorldFish, what do we do about it? At WorldFish, we're working hard to make the invisible visible, to generate the data, the tools, the evidence that make the case for change. But we need more than evidence. We need courage from development partners, scientists, from governments, businesses, and from all of us. Because believe me, and I will say this with conviction, the blue revolution will not happen on the margins. It must be mainstreamed into every food, climate, and development agenda. As a fishery scientist and an economist at the same time, I cannot help but say this again. Investing in aquatic food systems is not a niche concern. It's a high impact, high return strategy for feeding nature. But again, is it really a money issue? Is it really? Do we have shortage of money that goes into fisheries and aquaculture? There's a very well-known world authority who's done a lot of studies on this, on fishery subsidies, for example. Some estimates around $35 to $40 billion a year is given in fishery subsidies. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying every subsidy is bad. There's good subsidy, as that person calls it. There's bad, badly, right? A good subsidy is something that promotes sustainable management of fisheries. The bad ones are capacity enhancing. I could take my vessel from one off the coast of Spain, go around Africa, fish or hoover up the fish off the coast of Somalia, and come back and sell in the market, and it's still financially viable. This would not be possible in economic terms without subsidies. These kind of capacity enhancing subsidies are the ones that pillage our natural resources. But there's an opportunity to shift from the bad to the good. As you all know, Goal 14.6 of the SDGs explicitly calls upon member states to end harmful fishing subsidies. So therefore, if we were to shift from bad to good, we have $20 billion sitting there that can be utilized in sustainable management of fisheries. That person who's enlightened us all, or at least our generation, in bringing this information is this person. Sorry, this must be technical glitch. It's not me. It's that one instead. Rashid, if you may stand up, please. Thank you, Rashid. And Rashid, you do an excellent job in bringing this agenda at the highest of platforms, the WTO, going to the Congress, briefing the White House, the UN bodies. So really, we owe you a lot. So thank you very much, Rashid, for doing that great job. And he's also my board member, so I'm owed to say that. But also, I think there's also an opportunity in the digital innovation as well, which I call the frontier of inclusion and intelligence. Before digital innovation became popular, now due to ChatGPT and others, everybody's talking about it. The digital revolution holds enormous promise, but also risk. It can widen divides, or it can close them. At WorldFish, of course, we choose the latter. And I must say, digital innovation is not new to WorldFish. Let me take a moment to celebrate one of WorldFish's most far-reaching scientific legacies, FishBase. If you're in fishery science, you must have heard or utilized at least once in your life FishBase. This database, which began in 1990-ish as a niche idea, a digital repository to help scientists identify fish, has since grown into the world's most comprehensive open access database on fish species, now covering over 34,000 species and being utilized in 250 countries and territories across the globe. Again, this is something very personal to me. As a young scientist in Eritrea, a newly found country in 1993, which makes me older than my country itself. Not many of you can say that. As a new country, I joined the Ministry of Fisheries soon after graduation. And we were given a task by the minister then saying, we need to regulate our fisheries. You need to tell me when to fish, how to fish, when not to fish, and so on and so forth. How do you formulate that policy without data? Then I remember we wrote a letter to ICLARM then, not WorldFish, pleading that, can you send us that fish-based CD-ROM, please? It was $100, we couldn't afford it, but they kindly sent us a copy. And that was transformative for us as young scientists playing with that data to be able to determine about the reproductive cycle, the fish ecology, and so on and so forth, to inform our policy making. So this is the significance, sort of a lived experience of how important that database is. And it all started by one person getting frustrated. He was getting frustrated because he was looking for data on tropical fisheries and miserably failed because they're all scattered all over the place in archives and what have you. And then that initiative that led to the FishBase. And that person who got really frustrated is this person here, who was also one of the early scientists of WorldFish. And guess what? He also happens to be amongst us today. And that's Professor Daniel Pauly, if I may. You have not changed a bit. Daniel, you haven't changed a bit. You look exactly the same. But thank you very much for that long legacy. And this is what I say when scientists dare challenge conventional wisdom, and they're way ahead of their time to work on this. So thank you, Daniel. And fast forward to 21st century. We have been working on a tool. Again, data collection is a very, very expensive endeavor in fisheries. So how do we make this very cost effective? This is a bit exaggerated scale, by the way. It's literally the size of a double iPhone, very small gadget that's normally attached to fishing boats. And this is also an innovation by WorldFish and partners. I don't know, Alex Dilly, if he's in the room, there he is. Alex Silly, and the team who've been working on this starting from Timor-Leste by installing these small gadgets in small fishing boats and being able to track the fishing activity. When you sit in your room in almost near real time, displayed on your screen, it looks something like this, which gives you this amazing wealth of data to precisely understand the fishing activities that are happening, to be able to inform your fisheries policy. Now, this has gone from pilot to becoming the national fisheries data collection system for Timor-Leste. And as we speak today, is being scaled in Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. It's not just the fancy display of the data points, but also gives you this excellent dashboard as well, the decision-making process. But like everything else, there are always unintended consequences. But we celebrate them when the unintended consequence is a positive one. And this is about last year, when a colleague of mine received a text message via WhatsApp, distressed in the middle of the night, saying, my father went fishing and we haven't heard back from him. He's here in Penang. He called my colleague in the middle of the night, and my colleague opened up his computer, dialed in a few numbers, and was able to send the geolocation to his son. His son goes and locates his father. The son, who's overjoyed and delighted, immediately sends a video message to my colleague. You cannot hear the voice, but he praises God and he says, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, we found him. And this is an amazing story beyond the data, but also it's a safety measure for fisher communities. So I just want to celebrate my colleagues, Alex and colleagues, for doing this excellent job as well. But yeah, so again, as I said, it's really difficult to make justice to the number of amazing innovations that I can tally. There are so many of them. Some of them you will learn about them over the next couple of days. But I think what's equally important as scientists, because it's easy for us to think just about the science, but one of the excellent or critical delivery mechanisms is the way we partner as well. So first and foremost, I would say if we are serious about transformation, we must decolonize science. That means confronting whose knowledge counts, who sets research agenda, who gets funded, and who is visible on global platforms. It means acknowledging that too often the global south has been a site of extraction, not just of resource, but of ideas as well. At WorldFish, we are turning this around. We are investing in South-South collaboration, building capacity through hopefully soon to be launched WorldFish Academy, and through our excellent partners like the USOC as well. And ensuring that our research teams reflect the communities we serve. Our science is not parachuted in, it's embedded, emergent, and ethical. To achieve any of this, we must also evolve how we partner. The days for short-term projects with siloed outcomes must give way to long-term integrated programs that can cut across themes and borders, backed by regional hubs that ensure our work is demand-driven and context-specific. And we are already doing this. In the Pacific, for instance, we are shaping island food systems rooted in traditional knowledge and climate resilience. In West Africa, we're in discussion with the government of Cote d'Ivoire on establishing a regional hub with the support of the government of Cote d'Ivoire to advance innovation in fisheries and aquaculture. We are planning to establish a center of excellence for climate resilient coastal aquatic food systems, blending science, policy, and enterprise in a truly game-changing way. These are not projects. They are platforms for knowledge generation, innovation, collaboration, and impact. So colleagues, again, I'm sorry, forgive me, but I come from a very pastoral community, so I'm a storyteller, right? So I'm going to close with a story. In December last year, I had the privilege of visiting fish farmers in Timor-Leste, a country where aquaculture is fast becoming a cornerstone of food security and rural resilience. Just a decade ago, tilapia productivity stood at only 1 ton per hectare. That was in about 2012. Fast forward to today, it is 17 tons, thanks to the WorldFish and the Government of General of WorldFish's partnership, supporting over 800 farmers across 7 municipalities. So colleagues, in a slightly more than a decade, for productivity to go from 1 ton a hectare to 17 tons a hectare, that's significant. But particularly one story that stayed with me was that of João da Silva, as you can see him in the picture, a hatchery owner in Bobonaro. Starting from modest means, João now runs a modern gift hatchery, transports live fish in aerated tanks, and supplies seed across the country. He's built a new home, owns 3 trucks and motorcycles, and most powerfully, is sending his children to Indonesia for tertiary education. So colleagues, this is not just about fish. It's about transformation. It's about capabilities. It's about dignity. And in my opinion, this is what success looks like. Perhaps not in technical reports, but in livelihoods built and dreams made real. My fellow colleagues, we are not just scientists. We are narrators of possibilities. And this science fair is our collective story, a story of resilience, of innovation, of radical hope, a story where fish is not a footnote, but a force, where food systems are not broken, but reborn, where partnerships are not extractive, but transformative. So colleagues, let us commit not just to another year of research, but to a revolution in how we think, act, and connect. Let us make the next 50 years even bolder than the first, because the world is watching, and dare I say, the future is listening. Thank you, and welcome to the WorldFish Science Fair.